Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, however you're joining us, a very warm welcome today to FRS Season 3. Welcome to PC Division 2. As you can see on the calendar, we have a 12-race season in the bag for you that we're going to be bringing to you over the next few months. We've had a long break ourselves. We've had a few months off in our off-season to just recharge, to reevaluate, and to get things all sorted and ready to go. My name is Daniel Gilligan. I'll be bringing this race and so many more over the course of this season. We have 130 new races over 13 different divisions, and we've gone through a little rebrand as well. We're no longer the r/Formula One online racing league. We are now FRS, the Formula Reddit series. And just before we jump into today's session, we've got this little promo just to get you all a little bit more excited. So then, alongside me today, I have my fantastic co-commentator, the sexier part of this commentating duo, and that is a man by the name of Sean Provenza. But to those of you who watched in Season 2, he is of course known by the name Quimbulus. Quimbulus, how are you doing today?
Oh, quite good, quite good. Unlike last season, I'm not racing before these ones, so we're coming in a little bit colder. I'll be racing after, but it is great to get those strategies and see what the track is doing before the races go off. But really excited. Division 1 was a great way to kick off the season yesterday. Fantastic racing there, and looking for more of the same from Division 2 today.
Absolutely, yes indeed. And as you can see on the screens now, we have a new set of racers for PC Division 2. There'll be some familiar names and some who are perhaps new to you if you were watching last season. We have Timolele and Chamblizi in the Mercedes-Benz, alongside then Dolphy and Luke in the Red Bulls. Over at McLaren, it's Adam and Ole Olaf, and then Dog and Pasapa in the Racing Point. Donald and Erbel are then in the Renaults, and Charlie Chibbles in the Ferrari. And as that list continues to update for you, and there we are there. So alongside, so Charlie Chibbles, the only racer over at Ferrari in this particular division, but don't worry, as we'll be addressing in a moment, that doesn't mean his Constructors' Championships are all over already. And then in AlphaTauri, we have Rage and Mark Hopkins, one of the coordinators and one of the commentators from yesterday's Division 1 race as well. We then have Morwood and Booth over in the Haas team, with Puzel and False 12. Just Puzel in the Williams, and then False 12 and It's Hammer Time 44 over in Alfa Romeo. So then, with that list of drivers confirmed, we'll then have a look at the Teams Championship. This is our brand new championship that we are introducing, as well as your regular Drivers' Championship and Constructors' Championship that each individual division will have. We then have this new Teams Championship as well. And this combines all of the drivers across all of our various divisions and all of our platforms into a singular league. So if you are racing for Red Bull, for AlphaTauri, for Williams, any of the other teams, your points will contribute to this big pool. And at the end of it, we'll see which team is the best across the entire FRS. So, as well as that, then we have that 12-race calendar that we mentioned at the top of the show, and everything that's going to be coming up there. We have a few new additions this season with what's going on over there. We have a new round in Spain, which is going to be our race next time out on the 6th of February, that weekend. Then we also have Azerbaijan. We have Mexico as well, before we will then go to racing under the lights in Bahrain with a brief Italian tour between Spain and Azerbaijan as well. So then, before we get into all of that, we obviously have a race to do around Interlagos first. And just to get you all excited about that even more, we have a hot lap with Fraser.
I'm Fraser, and I'll talk you through Lap of Interlagos. For part 1 of the center assist turn 1, you want to brake it around the 50-meter board, take a bit of that outside tarmac right there, clip that inside curb for turn 2, stay really close to turn 3 on the inside. That can save you a hundredths or two. For turn 4, you want to brake 10 meters before the 50-meter board. Really throw your car in, don't go out too wide, be on the throttle very early. You can invalidate if you go too wide. Turn 5, completely flat. For turn 6, you want to brake 10 meters after the 50-meter board, clip those inside curbs, both of them preferably. Then for turn 8, try to clip that inside curb. I didn't do it there. Turn 9, stay to the inside as that is an on-camber corner. Be really careful on the exit though as you're going over hill. Turn 10, left-hand side, the grass. You want to take that as a braking point. Again, be really careful on the exit. This turn completely flat, turn 11. Turn 12, midway between 50 and 100 meter board, you want to brake. Again, slow in, fast out. I lost a bit of control there. Did cost me a couple of hundreds. But for the following turns, you want to again stay to the inside. And for the start finish, stay as close to the left as possible. And this is a lap around Interlagos.
So then, ladies and gents, let's get into it then. We have this circuit here at Brazil, the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache, the circuit Interlagos between the lakes. The anti-clockwise 15-turn circuit has 2 DRS zones, one down the start-finish straight and one on the straight after the Senna S, the first 3 corners there. The fast first and third sectors have a challenging technical middle sector to give a nice balance over the course of the lap here. Plenty of elevation change on this historic circuit as we start to see the cars peeling out of the pit lane at the start of their qualifying session. So then, Quimbulis, we've got a number of drivers who we recognise today. We've got the likes of Rage, we've got False 12, we've got Mark Hopkins. You know, we've got these guys who we know very well from Season 2 and in some cases even from Season 1. But are there any of the rookies that you've been keeping an eye on in some of the pre-season, in some of the evaluation and that sort of thing, which we think, do you know what, they might be worth keeping an eye on here?
There are a lot of the rookies are particularly interesting. I'm going to keep an eye on Olaf and Luke there. They're kind of the two I'm going to keep an eye out for. But I mean, as we saw in the race yesterday, the newcomers really tightening up the field, putting a lot of pressure on the old vets. In the qualifying yesterday, you know, 1.6 seconds covered the entire field and 1 second covered the top 18 spots. So huge crunch on the drivers there. So we'll look to see if that holds true in Division 2 as well, if these rookies can really put themselves right up towards the top of the field.
Absolutely, yes, indeedy. And we're just watching now as Rage is currently the lead car on circuit, or one of the cars on circuit anyway, that's currently doing a timed lap rather than on the out lap. Just going into Sector 2 now, and it's up this hill here, lots of right-hand turns before you then slow the car right down here and then into this long left-hander before you start to rise up that hill once again. And it's really a good, it's all about balance here at this circuit, isn't it? Because you don't want to have too much downforce to be able to nail this middle sector here. And then, you know, as we mentioned during that track map section at the just earlier on in the broadcast, you don't then want to have too much in the way of downforce, because then on this sector here, Sector 3, as Rage now climbs up the hill towards the start-finish line, we'll see what his time is in just a moment. But once you get onto these first and third sectors, you just don't want to be too slow in a straight line, rather, do you? And that's a 107.8. That's our first time on the board so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Very few big overtaking opportunities, and the opportunities that you do have are on the long straights, the front straight, and headed down into turn 4. So you want that straight line speed to be available to you, while at the same time trying to balance that really tough middle sector. You're really going to use the second sector to just kind of set up a move on the car ahead as you're coming out of Junsao there, which is really your best chance to get a launch and make a move. But another thing that happens is you really have to worry about your tire temperatures here. Those front tires can get very overloaded over the course of a race by putting so much pressure on them, braking downhill into the Senna S. And if you get too much heat and overheat those front tires, once you hit that second sector, it'll be just understeer city, and you've really got to manage those temperatures all the way throughout the race.
Yes, indeed. And now as we watch as Chamblizi comes up and across the line there, that's 107.862. So we've had a bit of movement up and down the field there. We've got a lot of times in the 1 minute 7.8, and then we've got a couple more in the 179s. But then interestingly, at the top of the field, there's a bit of a gap really between Husam 22 in the Williams car, who's set a 107.146. As they're now heading through the Senna S at the start of another lap, or perhaps on their in-lap, given that they are currently using the set tyres they used to put that first-time lap on. And then there's a good there was a half second. Dog has now leapt up to second place, or has done a little bit earlier, perhaps, with a 107.191. So they're very close in the top 2 positions there. And then P3 and P4 very close to one another, but a good sort of 0.4, half a second or so back from the top two. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not the rest of the field is going to be able to bring that fight in qualifying to Hugh Sam and to Dog. But Quimbulas, if you were going around Interlagos and you were looking in, bright conditions like these, what sort of times would you be expecting? You'd be looking at these 1.7s, or were we going to get into the 1.6s with Division 2 here today?
We may see a couple times dip into the 1.6s. Husam and Dog are pretty close there, but I would say the majority are going to be improve their times down to the low 1.7s, is what I would expect. And, it may be a case where getting the early laps in, we're going to see some of the vets towards the top of the tables early as the rookies kind of settle into the qualifying session, and let their kind of raw pace come out. So we'll just kind of have to see as times come in. It looks like Herbal's about to cross the line in the Renault, and he's gone a little further down there. He's 108.7, but some drivers, I'm sure, getting kind of a banker lap in, being careful. It's easy to trigger track limits through the first sector, the Senna S's. You really got to take a lot of curb to optimize that line. And I'm sure drivers just trying to get a banker time in this 18-minute qualifying session.
Yes, indeedy. So we're having a look then at Rage as they're making their way around. Now, of course, Rage was, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Quimbulas being our stats man for the league, but he was the Division 2 champion in Season 1, is that right? And then he made his move up to Division 1 last season, and then with this big influx of drivers, he's now back into Division 2. Is that all correct so far?
That is on the money so far. Yeah, took the initial opening title in Division 2 there, made the jump up to Div 1 and had a bit of a struggle in that upper division, and I think is happy to be kind of back home and back where his title is in Div 2. But I mean, as you were saying, so many new drivers coming in means that the quality of racing has gone up tremendously, and so we should see quite a few challengers now coming after him.
And do you think it's going to be a bit like if he was, a boxer or a martial artist or something like that, where they're sort of hovering around a particular weight limit? So, they're either at perhaps the lower end of the higher division or the top end of the lower division. Is it going to be that sort of a thing where we may see, championship number 2 for Rage being on the cards this season, or is the level of talent just a bit more spread, and so he may be a bit more of an evens challenger going into this season?
You can never really count out somebody that has won a championship, regardless of how much the field has changed, because at least at that point, they've got the experience of being in a title fight and having settled the nerves and been able to work through that and close out the championship. That being said, we've got drivers like Timolele, who just went ahead of Rage on the timesheets there, who is a Division 3 champion in a tremendous fashion, jumping up to Div 2 now. So we will see what they can do.
Absolutely, yes, indeedy. So just to give you a bit of an update in terms of where some drivers are starting to shape out over the course of the session, we've got Dog that we're just keeping an eye on at the moment. They've not gone green in Sector 1, so they've not improved on their personal best time, but they've got the rest of the lap still to make some improvements. So we'll keep an eye on them for the rest of this lap. We've not seen a new lap just yet from Hugh Sam either, and it looks like their Dog has maybe just bailed out the particular lap, allowing the Ferrari of Charlie Chibbles through there, and he will probably just recharge his battery, allow his tyres to just cool down a little bit, and then he'll go again, I'm sure. Charlie Chibbles on a personal best for Sector 1, and not quite then being able to make a personal best in Sector 2. Bit of oversteer there, heading out of Jun Sao, the final proper corner on the circuit, although turn 14 technically, and into the pits they go. So away they go there. That's the end of that particular lap. Dog has also decided to go into the pits, so rather than just recharging and going again, they've thought to themselves, now let's just go straight into the pits, maybe see about getting some new tyres on or some new fuel, something like that. So with the order as it stands then, we've seen a bit of movement. We've now got Morwood in the top 3 in the Haas with a 107.296. So it is starting to come towards the top end of the field here in terms of the times. And if we have a look further down, we have Ole Olaf in the McLaren at 107.3. So just 4 thousandths behind Morwood. So that's going to be a close bearing, one that we should keep an eye on for the rest of this virtual weekend. Then we've got Timolele, we have Booth, Rage, Charlie Chibbles, Dolphy, Luke, Mark Hopkins, Shambleezy, False 12, Donald, It's Hammer Time, and Erbil. So then, what's very interesting to me as well is that it's a real credit to our boys and girls who are doing all the behind-the-scenes work, in terms of evaluating these drivers and putting them into fair, balanced leagues where we've got everybody here separated by about a second and a half, really. And you have to think that perhaps, if Hammer Time and Herbal were able to get themselves just that bit more time out of the car. Perhaps Herbal's had a mistake on their lap, for example, being about a half second, 4/10 or so off of its Hammer Time ahead of them. If they get themselves into the 107s, then that means we've got the whole division covered by just 1 second. That's the closest it would have been for a long time, even within the world of Formula One itself.
Yeah, definitely a great matchup of the driver skills as Hugh Sam up on the first and a purple second sector. So he should be the first to go into the 106s there. Does, in fact, cross the line a 106.831. So he cements his provisional pole time a little bit stronger. But yeah, as you were saying, much closer than real life Formula One. Obviously, we have equal performance across all the cars. So it's all driver skill at this stage. But to really get those divisions matched up so that the racing is so tight is quite a Herculean effort with the growth of the league over this last season.
Absolutely, yes, indeed. And I think another shout out, it's only fair. We've avoided mentioning him so far because he's become shy in his old age, bless him. It's the Mac Daddy of the FRS. It's the man who makes it all look very, very pretty for you guys at home watching, giving us all the special custom graphics, all the extra telemetry, all that good stuff. It's Mr. Tom Mack. He's here in the chat with us. Whether or not he's going to join us on microphone, it's entirely up to him. And I'll give him enough time to think about that. Maybe he's having a snack, as I often seem to be calling him into commentary whilst he's eating. It's been known to happen. Not today, he says. Not today. So, Tom, are you joining us? Are you joining us
hello,
for
yes.
a quick chat?
We're in the midst of a qualifying session just as we look at Dog, unfortunately, extend track limits there. In unfortunate fashion, he's got a tough job. I raced against Hugh Sam in PS4 last year and he was quick. So it's absolutely no surprise to me that he's come into Div 2 and is dominating already.
Absolutely. And just having a look at the chat, obviously, we only do this because we like to give you guys at home some entertainment. We like to engage with our audience here at FRS. We've got a couple of messages, and just while we've got you here, Tom, I think it's worth mentioning that Fraser from Division 1, the one who's helped us out with the hot laps, he wants you to take his lemons. What's your thoughts on that?
Later.
Okay, well, there we go then. It's not a no, Fraser. So I've done you a favor there. Just pay me later. It's fine. Right. So let's get back to it then in a much more professional sort of way. We've got one more driver who's joined Hugh Sam in the 106s, and that is Timalele, the current reigning Division 3 champion, a 106.9 for them, so about a 1/10 shy or so of Hugh Sam's best time, rather, as it stands at the moment. Dog still not set a second lap time as of yet. They're just waiting in the pits at the moment for their prime opportunity to go out and do a bit of a last lap heroics, that sort of thing, as the Mercedes now of Chamblizi exits the pits and heads out to do their outlap. We've got a few drivers at the moment who are currently on their timed laps. We've got, for example, if my controller stops disconnecting, we've got Booth out on a time lap at the moment. The Haas driver currently going through Sector 2 at the moment and just getting the car slowed down nicely there to be able to just accelerate down the hill and then back up towards the end of that second sector there. How are they looking in terms of their sector times? Well, it's an improvement for Sector 1, and they're already in P6 at the moment, so we could see someone jumping up towards the top end here, potentially into the top 3. We'll wait and see. Oh, but then 6/10 down overall in the lap after that second sector. So it's looking like, unless they have an almighty final sector, it's unlikely that they're going to be improving here. And will they go into the pits? Yes, they do. So it's going to be new tyres, fresh tank of fuel, and one more attempt in the last 4 minutes and 10 seconds of this qualifying session. So, Crimbulus, we'll just throw it back to you briefly for a moment here then. So we've got a couple of teammate matchups which could potentially be quite interesting. I'm having a look at the Red Bulls in particular of Dolphy and Luke. Both drivers are currently in the pits at the moment, so in terms of their on-track action, it's not spectacularly exciting just yet. But those guys are very closely matched. They're both in the 1.7.4s. team constructors championship that we've got to think about, the constructors champion for PC Division 2, and then the teams championship overall. Do we think that Red Bull, especially after the performance yesterday from the winner in PC Division 1, is that the team that we're probably thinking these guys have got the chance, these guys have got the opportunity to really capitalize on these early rounds?
Well, yeah, they've definitely gotten off to a good start. Dolphy and Luke both very new to league. Luke, a pure rookie. Dolphy joining for the final race in Div 1 last season, so really only one race under his belt there. So plenty of opportunity for them to learn, and I think just getting off on the right foot with Red Bull taking the race win in Div 1 yesterday to kick off that team's championship could put them in a very good position. The only thing to be maybe a little bit concerned about is if these two qualifying times that they have are their true pace and representative of it, we might see some fighting on track because they're both coming out of the pits at the same time, nose to tail there. So we'll see if they're going to get in each other's way or if they're going to play a little bit more of the team game and work together.
Oh, interesting stuff from the Red Bulls then. It could be that they might try practicing a bit of slipstreaming, a bit of using the toe around this circuit, because of course the Formula One games, they're not exactly simulation. An awful lot of people coin the term simcade. They're that middle ground, that no man's land between an arcade racing game and a full-on simulation. But there is some element of aerodynamic disturbance that you would find in normal Formula One that is simulated in these games. It will become harder to follow a car the closer you get to them. But in terms of that toe effect, you obviously, Quimbless, you're racing in the Xbox Division 1 at the moment, and you obviously did do very successfully last season as well. How does that toe effect feel? Is it particularly significant, or is it not really worth thinking about?
It's definitely something to think about, especially with how long the straight is around Brazil here, but it looks like those two Red Bulls have kind of separated themselves out on the track map a little bit. But around tracks with a long straight, Monza, it could be definitely worth it. However, trying to communicate and organize it is tough, especially with only when they come out 2.5 minutes left to go in the session. So you really need to kind of stagger and alternate laps in order to do that. So looks like they have spread out a little bit though to just get their lap time set in. They're both on a flyer right now, although it looks like Dolphy has invalidated his lap time already. He does have enough time to make it back around to the start finish line and start one more flying lap on this one. So we'll see if he can recharge the battery. However, he will be on tires that are a little bit older. Look for the last couple of minutes here, though, for some times to potentially fall, as typically in the last 5 minutes or so of these qualifying sessions is when the game really takes that track evolution into account, and that the track tends to rubber up a bit and you get a little bit more grip in the corners and get a little bit quicker.
Absolutely. And you're just talking there about obviously he'll have those problems, will Dolphy, in terms of a bit of tyre wear heading into their final lap. Someone who's just coming across the line now is Ole Olaf. They seem to be on tyres that are 4 laps old. And considering that they're in P5 at the moment, that means that they're going into the race with tyres that are at least 4 laps old, unless someone is able to bump them out all the way down to P11.
Yeah, definitely an interesting choice. Maybe purposeful, maybe accidental. Can't say for certain without asking them directly. We may be one to follow up on in the paddock later there. But yeah, they'll be starting on those older tires, and it will kind of lock them out. The ideal strategy here is a soft onto medium. But you really have to stretch both of those stints. And if he's starting with already 4 qualifying laps in a set of tires, that's really going to take that strategy almost off the table for them.
Yes, indeed. So the checkered flag is now out. Some drivers have finished their sessions. Dog is still in the pits, didn't come out for another run, it seems. So they are currently P3 as things stand. Mark Hopkins has also finished their session. They are currently in P7 and False 12 in 12th. And then we have Shambleezy in 14th and Herbal in 16th. Across the line comes Charlie Shibbles, and it is P13 for them so far. So no improvement overall in their time. So only Hammer Time able to displace them from that 13th position. And in terms of those currently still setting lap times, Luke has decided to go into the pits, so they will not complete their lap. We've then got Rage has also completed their lap now and is staying in P11. We've then got the other Red Bull now of Dolphy, which we're just riding on with, and no, into the pit lane they go with an invalid lap time, as I can see from the track map there. And it seems as though everybody is filing away into the pits who haven't already come across the line and been shown the checkered flag, and that seems to be the end of the session. So unless we get any last-minute updates with the game not displaying information correctly, this seems to be your qualifying order. So taking pole position for this race in Interlagos, it is Hugh Sam 22 with a 106.657, improving by a couple of tenths there at the end of the session. Then on P2 will be Tim Alele in the Mercedes, the Division 3 reigning champion, certainly making their mark in Div 2 so far. Dog will then line up on third position with a 107.1, and then alongside them Morewood, someone who is very popular in the chat, I can see. Awful lot of shout outs for them. For the rest of the order then, we have from P5 downwards, we have Ole Olaf, and in just a moment when it displays the leaderboard for us once again, I'll be able to run through the rest of that order for you. And there we are then. So Ole Olaf in 5th place, Booth in 6th, Mark Hopkins 7th, Donald in 8th, and then Dolphy in 9th, Luke in 10th, Rage in 11th, False 12 in 12th, Charlie Chibbles in 13th, Shambleezy in 14th, It's Hammer Time in 15th, and then rounding out the grid is Erbil in 16th. So then, Quimbulis, in terms of your stars of qualifying, are we giving that one to Hugh Sam? As Tom mentioned earlier on the broadcast, of course, very quick racer from the PlayStation division, making their move over to PC. Or do we have a look at Tim Alele, perhaps? Division 3 champion has made their move up and immediately made an impact.
Well, I mean, they definitely are both deserving of, but one thing that the chat is definitely pointing out, and I had to double check for myself, that Hugh Sam actually outpaced the Div 1 pole time. Granted, different track conditions. It was much warmer on track for them, but the Div 1 pole time was a 106.7, and Hugh Sam got into the 106.6s.
So there we are then. We've got some decent movements and decent times being displayed here then. It'll be interesting to see whether or not those track conditions then maintain through into the race, of course, because we could end up seeing some different weather. Who knows? We will find out in just a few moments' time. But for now, we'll go to a very quick break and we will join you once the session is restarted. So then, welcome back as we are on the formation lap now for this Brazilian Grand Prix around the track of Interlagos. Of course, as they always like to point out in real life, the name translates to Between the Lakes. And of course, that is where the circuit sits. It sits between two lakes as we have a look at some of the predicted stop strategies for this race here. I'm seeing on my screen at least some predicted pit stop strategies. They're not showing up on our feeds because Codemasters like to just display information to different people at different times. We do have a bit of weather information there though that you saw from Tom working his magic in the background. So bright sunny day here at Interlagos as Hugh Sam leads them around on this formation lap here. It's not quite as speedy perhaps as the formation lap from yesterday in Division 1, but there is a gap starting to form between Hugh Sam and Tim Alele behind. Tim Alele just bunching that pack up a bit more, taking a bit more time in terms of warming up their tyres and just prepping the car, probably doing a bit more in the way of gear syncing as well. And there we go, we see the predicted pit stop strategy then. So if you start on the soft tyre, the game predicts you will pit between lap 13 and 15 onto a set of mediums and then go to the end of the race. Of course, the two-stop strategy is available, but that will not be the optimum solution unless we have a safety car or any other sort of stoppage in the race. So as these cars are starting to line up, then we have just a quick repeat and a reminder of your race order before we get underway. We have Hugh Sam, then Tim Alele, Dog, Morewood, Ole Olaf, Booth, Mark Hopkins, Donald, Dolphy, Luke, Rage, False 12, Charlie Chibbles, Shambleezy, It's Hammer Time, and Erbil. So as we start to see them form up at the back of the grid, it seems as though everybody is ready. So just going on board then, it's 4 or 5 red lights. Lights out and away we go. It's a good start from the Williams driver of Hugh Sam. They're making a good move down into turn 1 and the Mercedes just behind having to defend into turn 1, and around the outside goes the Racing Point. There's been a big incident further back in the field and a lot of cars off track there. We've got a few cars ghosting as well. We'll have to keep an eye on this as the situation develops. We've got Hugh Sam currently out in the lead with then the Racing Point of Dog following along behind with Tim Alele then in 3rd position. with the Renault then of Donald just behind, Mark Hopkins following through, then Dolphy, Erbil making a fantastic getaway off of the start, and then Luke, Ole Olaf, and Rage just behind them, finishing out the top 10. So we've got an awful lot of movement here. I'm just starting to notice there is a few differences on my timing screen versus that on the feed. So we will have to wait until the... Oh, and there's an incident. There is an incident further back down the field. The Renault of Erbil has been hit by one of the Alpha Tauris on my screen, but they seem to have recovered and seem to be getting going again just fine. They're out in P12 on the field there, just following through into Junsao and back up the hill. So we'll keep an eye on this, and hopefully the game will sort itself out as we go across the line, finishing lap 1 here. So Hugh Sam leads the field with Dog just behind, Timalele, then AR Donald, and then Mark Hopkins just behind them. Then we have a bit of a gap after the Red Bulls just behind the Alpha Tauri. Back to Ole Olaf, who is not quite close enough, although we have Luke, and then we have Dolphy very close to one another. These teammates, of course, you don't want to be hitting your teammate. That is the first rule of motor racing. And we have no DRS for these first 2 laps, but lap 3 we will enable the DRS, and so we might then start to see some moves on that second straight there. We've got some movement further down as well. We've got Morwood in the pits, and then it's Hammer Time as well. Hammer Time coming out ahead of Morwood from that pit stop, and Booth is also into the pits, hasn't been able to stop in the Haas box just yet, and I'm just staying on board with them briefly. The Haas team just waiting to get everything sorted out again and ready to go, because of course they just received Morwood, so there's a bit of a delay. They're stuck in the pit box, and then they finally start getting to work. So we look back at the action then, and we have a bit more going on up and down the field. We've got Dog and Timalele very close to one another on circuit, and setting some consistent lap times, with Hugh Sam under some constant pressure here. We've got then AR Donald and Mark Hopkins alongside one another. They're going down the start-finish straight. No DRS yet, of course. It's all about who's going to out-drag the other, who's got the better setup in a straight line. And they go down into turn 1. It's being made 3 wide, though, by the Red Bull behind. And the AlphaTauri seems to be making the position. Down the order goes Donald. He's been overtaken by the AlphaTauri, and then also by Dolphy as well. Luke slots in behind and is going to be able to take advantage of this, I'm sure. Pulling alongside the Renault now, going down towards turn 4, the Cena Delago, and then it's a safety car. Safety car has been called, as It's Hammer Time is out of the session. They've had an incident at Junsao that I can see, and I'll have a look through to, I think one of the Haas cars is starting to approach them now, so I will keep an eye on that as they make their way around. Hopefully the car is still there. We can see whether or not that was a crash, or whether that was maybe just the driver pulling up to one side. We'll wait and see. But note, the car has disappeared from the map before the car that I'm watching has gotten there. So that is a safety car then. Quimbulas, that was all very quick. That was all very, very frantic just before that incident there. We're just seeing this time lost under safety car with the full safety car here.
Looks like we may have lost Dan there, but yeah, we see we only lose about 11 seconds taking
you
hit on the safety car there. Oh, and it sounds like Dan's back. Well, quite a cracking start. A ton of action in the early laps there. A lot of side-by-side movement that looked like we were going to get through it all right, but then as the DRS became enabled, even more fights. A very brave move from Dolphy down into turn 1 to make that 3 wide alongside Mark Hopkins and Donald at the early start there. Donald got off to a really good start, picking up 4 positions in that opening lap there to get himself right outside of the podium positions, but Mark Hopkins recovered very well, and you can see lots of cars 2 and 3 wide down into turn 1 there in that drag race. Here we are, you can see on board with Dolphy, just getting his kind of nose in there, not pulling fully alongside, but the compromised exit from Donald there is really what opened the door and allowed Dolphy to sneak through. So definitely taking very good advantage of the opportunities he saw there. But as soon as the DRS was enabled, we had that safety car coming out. Doesn't look like anybody is necessarily taken to the pits just yet. We will see who are the big winners and losers as far as position changes. Obviously, Morwood and Booth, the 2 Haas's coming together in that opening lap and having to make an early pit stop down big. 9 and 10 positions respectively there, but Mark Hopkins up 3 positions, Dolphy up 4. So plenty of movement there. Shamblizi just getting himself into the top 10 and into the points, although carrying what looks to be a 5-second penalty, and him and False 12 both carrying it. So it may be an instance where there is a coming together under the safety car that has cost them a little bit more time. So we'll see how the stewards react with that one. after the race and if that ends up making any kind of difference. But Hugh Sam with the great start out front, still leading from Dog and Timolele. And you have Mark Hopkins, Dolphy, Donald, Luke, Olaf, Rage, Shamblizi, False 12, Herbal, Charlie Chibbles, and Morewood and Boof at the back. Now, this is a really good opportunity for Morewood and Boof, who dropped but stayed on the lead lap, luckily. So they have an opportunity to really make it work going forward now that the field is going to be all bunched up. They are on the hard compounded tire, which after that first lap pit may not quite get them all the way to the end. So we may see them have an opportunity to go onto a fresh set of soft tires at the very end of the race and be absolutely rapid. But I would guess that most of the drivers out there on those soft compounds are going to be looking to go to lap 15 or 16 and put on some mediums and go to the end.
Fantastic analysis there, Quimbless. I apologize to everybody if I disappeared. I mean, network issues seem to be a commonplace whenever I'm commentating on a race. But we are back to it then. We are back in this race. Safety car just circulating at the moment then. So, Quimbless, you've taken the question away from me before I can even ask it to you. And that is what is being discussed in the chat at the moment. And that is, of course, all to do with whether those hard tyres will get to the end or not. Do you think it's going to be a question that they will definitely need to preserve them? Or is it going to be a case that they can drive them reasonably well and try and get some performance out of them?
To get to the end on the hard tires, I think at this stage you'll definitely have to preserve them. You're not going to be able to push, and I think it's a pretty big stretch to get them all the way to the end. So if I was in this situation, I would stayed with the majority of the field and stayed out on the starting set of tires. Interesting to see only a couple of drivers from outside the top 10 opted for the medium strategy. We saw a decent amount of that in the Division 1 race, running that reverse strategy, essentially running mediums and then onto softs. And we only saw a few instances of the hard, and they definitely were a bit of a struggle to get around. Now, track temperatures were a little lower in that PC Division 1 race, so they were able to keep the tires in window a little better. And it may be an instance where running that soft to medium, you're still going to struggle with overheating, and we may see some drivers opt for the hards instead to try and keep those tire temperatures down and keep that pace up.
Yes, indeed, and just a bit of an interesting development as we watch the cars continue to circulate here. But Timolele seems to have dropped out of the session. Their car on my screen is ghosted. There was the message coming up saying that they had left the session. Whether or not they've been able to rejoin since, I'm not entirely sure. But I'm sure we'll get some more news on that as things develop. Of course, it would be an awful shame if we lost them from this fight at the front. Things were staying relatively equal with themselves, Hugh, Sam, and Dog, fighting out at the front. And then, of course, Mark Hopkins is coming back into this fight as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that starts to shape up. But for now, the reigning champion from Division 3 losing their opportunity to continue making strides in this division, Division 2. And safety car is in at the end of this lap. So it will be the end of this lap then. So Hugh Sam getting ready to lead the field away, just backing everybody up, letting that safety car bolt away. And then the Timolele car has disappeared. Timolele has bolted and he's gone into the pits, according to my screen. No, he's braked, he's waited, and now he's allowed all the cars by again. So clearly some sort of rejoining error for him, but away we go. And Hugh Sam has been able to maintain his lead. We've got some confusion, and the Renault goes off the circuit along with the McLaren, and that is Donald off the circuit with Ole Olaf, and they've dropped massively down the order. Mark Hopkins gets a 5-second time penalty for ignoring yellow flags. So we've got all sorts of cars going off the circuit. We have Charlie Chibbles going off, and also Dolphy. Those two involved in an incident with one another, and Dolphy just hitting the barrier a second time. The car just completely undrivable for them at this stage. We're just having a look at what's going on up and down the field. We've got Shamblizi right up behind the AlphaTauri of Rage, who's been able to do a good recovery after a bit of a weak start from the AlphaTauri driver. And now then they are very close to one another on circuit. Of course, much like at the race start, we will have another period where we will have 3 laps of running before we enable the DRS. So don't expect to see any DRS overtakes over this next couple of laps. So we've got to keep an eye on these time deltas. If we have the situation that's developing at the front right now, where Hugh Sam is getting away, getting outside 1 second, that means that as the Haas goes up the inside of the McLaren of Ole Olaf there, Morewood making an attempt at the move. He's alongside. It's now going to be a drag race up the hill. He's got the overtake enabled as well, so he's been able to blast by the McLaren, who's just lifted off and allowed everybody to go by. So along they go then. Morewood has run out of deployment for that lap, but he's just gone across the start start-finish line, so he's been able to re-enable his ERS once more there. So he's backed up then by Donald, who's right up behind the Haas driver. Again, though, no DRS down this start-finish straight. It's all going to be about the use of their electrical deployment or their fuel modes and that sort of thing, as we watch the McLaren getting the new front wing there. Morewoods just defending that position nicely into turn 4 as well, not giving any opportunity for Donald to get by there. As we see Charlie Chibbles making their way past the Red Bull of Dolphy in the pits. Dolphy only just now getting released from their box. So unfortunate incidents on that restart there, but things seem to have calmed down now, and we are racing again. So your running order at the moment is the podium positions. We have Hugh Sam in the lead, followed by Dog, as it has been for much of this race. Then we have Mark Hopkins in third, taking that position from Timilele after the strange way in which they rejoined the session and had to slow down and allow everybody back by. Then we have Luke in fourth, and then Rage, Timilele, Shamblizi, False, Erbil, Morwood, Donald, Booth, Ole Olaf, Charlie Chibbles, and Dolphy rounding out the pack with, of course, It's Hammer Time out of this session after an incident at the final corner at Junsao. So a bit of a lockup I saw there for Mark Hopkins as they're being pursued by Luke in the sister Red Bull team. And of course, there'll be no love lost between these teams because, unlike in real life, they're not operating for the same company as we see. Now, Timilele right up behind the car of Rage, and they're having to go defensive, but now up the inside, the Mercedes driver showing why they are a champion and getting right up there, making an overtake happen at an area of the track you wouldn't expect it as they go alongside into the corner, and Rage has been able to get it back. So one champion to another. I'll be having my position back, thank you very much, he says, and up he goes. So those alternate strategy tyres there working well for Rage at this stage in the race. We have, of course, 9 laps on the board, or rather 8 laps on the board on the 9th lap, and at this stage you would start to think that maybe Timilele's tyres are going to be starting to go away from them a bit. It's going to be moving more with every lap, every corner towards Rage in terms of that tyre advantage, because of course, as we saw on that graphic at the start of this session, it will be around lap 13 to 15 is when we will expect to see the soft tyre runners coming into the pits, but this battle is far from over as we now have the DRS open on Timilele's car. They're not using the overtake function, so they are closing up to the AlphaTauri right behind them now, but not able to effect an overtake on the start-finish straight. They go through the Senna S, seem to have a good line, ever so slightly different to that of Rage, and they've seemed to have gotten a good exit out of it. Rage going very defensive now, down into turn 4, DRS open for Timilele. The Mercedes driver brakes late, goes around the outside, and takes that position there. I think that's going to be an overtake that will stick, as I don't think there's going to be much opportunity there for Rage to fight back on that one. So it is Timilele 5th, Rage 6th in this Brazilian Grand Prix. Quimbules, over to you. What are you thinking in terms of what's going on right now? We've got Luke just ahead of this battle as well, looking at the back of Mark Hopkins, and they are just separated by about a half a second. Mark struggling with some lockups and things like that. We've then got the 2 Renault drivers that we're just seeing here as well, fighting over that final points-paying position. Where's your eye on at the moment?
Well, I'm definitely keeping an eye on what Timilele is doing after that rejoin issue. I'm guessing that he took control of the car and assumed it was back to green and accelerated, and then saw everybody wasn't moving. But seeing him chew his way back through the field, he set a fastest lap a little bit earlier, and now he's closing up on Luke as Mark Hopkins is trying to battle alongside the sister teams there, although it looks like Luke is going to hold that one. So we'll see what the cars that were caught up in incidents are going to do. And we'll
2 seconds there, Quimbules. We've got a re-overtake. We've got Mark Hopkins overtaken on the start-finish straight, re-overtakes on the second straight, and then up the inside on that straight, making a move into turn 4. And this battle is far from over, it seems. Luke and Mark Hopkins going to be fighting each other lap after lap here. Out to the front, it seems like Hugh Sam has checked out. They're about 2 seconds ahead of Dog, who similarly is about 2.8 seconds ahead of Mark Hopkins behind. So it's very much a 2-horse battle in terms of the top 2 positions. They're not threatening one another at all, really, or being threatened by the car behind. And then it's Mark Hopkins, Luke, Timilele, and then Rage. They're all in that gaggle of cars that are all just looking to get that even higher points paying position, even more points on the board. And don't go anywhere, do not adjust your sets. This is a battle that I think will be going on for many, many laps, certainly until the pit stop phases, when we start to see some movement, especially from those guys starting on the soft tyre. As we mentioned earlier on, they will be pitting around that lap 13 to 15 mark, unless we go for any really severe undercuts here. But we will wait and see as to how that all shapes out. So Luke then is now just 4 tenths behind Mark Hopkins as they go onto that second DRS straight. The DRS is open for the Red Bull driver, but only 8% of their overtake is remaining. So they're not using it. They're not able to deploy a massive amount of electrical energy. So as a result, they're not really been able to make many inroads towards Mark Hopkins on that particular lap. Similar thing can be said of Timalele just behind, as we see a replay now of the Williams just going across the start-finish straight there. And that is the safety car restart. So we see there in the background, we have that Renault being tagged by the McLaren, the Renault of Donald there being tagged by the McLaren, who may well have been tagged themselves. They were just out of shot, so I was unable to see how exactly they came together. But then, yes, having to go to the escape roads, to the off part of the circuit, and then, yeah, the Red Bull and the Ferrari just ahead of them, give them 2 free positions back up the order. But yeah, it's incidents abound in that initial flurry. And then, of course, we had this fantastic battle with the Mercedes of Timalele just trying to get one around the outside of Rage, having done an excellent switchback maneuver in turn 4. But then it was not to be that particular lap. But then the very next lap we saw going around the outside into turn 4. Very easily done that particular occasion. So back to the live feed then. Pit strategy is now open, the pit window for these cars, and we have a look then, and the gap is relatively similar in these top few positions then. We've not really seen much improvement by the way of Mark Hopkins trying to gather onto the back of Dog. That gap still hovering between sort of that 2.5, 3 seconds or so, depending whereabouts on the circuit we are. Luke is still very close indeed. We can see here the gap only about sort of 2-3 tenths as they go through corner to corner here. So this is one of the closest battles on circuit at the moment. We then have Hugh Sam just further extending their lead, really stamping their authority on this race so far. Nearly up to 4 seconds now, the gap for the Williams driver out in front. And certainly that's a phrase that won't be said in Formula One for some time to come, I'm sure. But then we have the medium tyre runners just after Timalele in 5th. About 1.5 seconds back is Rage, the first of those 2 cars, and then False 12 immediately behind them, the only medium runners in the field at the moment, and they are equally about 2.5 seconds back from Rage. Rage now within a second of Timalele, but probably not going to be making any move on this lap for sure. And then into the Senate S then, these cars continuing to circulate. Of course, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier on with the problem with the dirty air effect. You know, if you get into this rhythm and you're unable to really break the toe, then you can't accelerate away from those chasing you. And similarly, if you're unable to then follow effectively through these corners and get your exits right, particularly out of corners like Junsao and the Senna S, to be able to have a run on those straights, then making an overtake really becomes difficult. And then you'd think that, you know, with Mark Hopkins having these lockups, another puff of smoke there we saw, and then Luke driving a much cleaner race, it seems, in terms of the way they're looking after their tyres. It must be very frustrating for the Red Bull driver to see these mistakes being made by the AlphaTauri ahead, but not really being able to affect a move because of the way these cars interact with one another, and then, of course, the layout of this circuit. That's something which hopefully will change in 2022 when we have the new regulations coming in. But for now, it's something that we will have to put up with. So, onto this DRS straight then. The DRS is now open for Luke, and into the pit goes Mark Hopkins. So Mark has had enough of those tyres. Lap 15, they've decided, or the end of lap 14 rather, they've decided to go onto those tyres. And the pit window is now also open for the medium tyre runners. So we would expect to see them coming in around about the same time to go perhaps onto the hard tyres, or maybe if they can stretch out their stint just a bit longer, they might be able to get onto the softs for the end of the race for a last sprint to the line. Something to note there is Mark Hopkins on their entry into the pits unfortunately got a time penalty. So they will have to serve that either at their next pit stop if they have another one, or at the end of the race it will be added to the end of their time. So we're now just watching this battle then between, who is that? That is Chamblizi, Donald and Booth all together then, and Morwood 3-second time penalty with multiple warnings. So of course we race strict corner cutting in the FRS. In PC's Division 1 and 2, and of course they will just overstep the mark in searching for that extra bit of time, but they've had a very good recovery. Of course, they were back down near the bottom of the grid after the first few laps and those first few exchanges, and now up to P6 for the Haas driver, albeit there will be some pit stops still to shape out here and rejig the order slightly, but seems to be a good recovery so far from the Haas driver. And now Dog into the pits as well, and they're also being followed in by Chamblizi, thinking to themselves, right, I've had enough of following that Renault, let's get in, get some new tyres on and then undercut them. So we start to see the order starting to shape out then. So we've got Donald making their way down the second straight here. We're just having a look on board with one of the Red Bulls. That is car number 14, and that is Luke. That is heading uphill. And then we have a look back to car number 88, and that is Timolele, rather, who is now going down the second DRS straight. And we see a couple of hashtag Go Morewoods in chat. So he's certainly got a good fan base so far. And this is just his first race as well. Fantastic. So we'll give another quick rundown of the order once we start to see everybody having made their stops. Of course, those guys on the hard tyres are unlikely to make another stop around about this point in the race. We could see them either go all the way to the end or perhaps have to make another stop onto a set of softs or mediums towards the end of this race just to make it to the end there. So into the pits goes the other Red Bull then. So in goes Luke, getting off of those tyres on lap 17, having done a very good job in keeping them alive and keeping competitive for all that time. But now they will get those new sets of boots on. And Hugh Sam, the former race leader, is also into the pits. They've just taken their tyres from Williams, as we see the mechanics there just sauntering back into the garage. And if I just go on board with him now, or at least I try to go on board with him, and there we go. He's just coming out of the pit lane now. So we just see him then, and just behind Erbil. So Erbil is ahead of them. They've got 16-lap-old soft tyres, and as you can see, they're just missing the apex of that corner, turn 4 and 5. So they're clearly not driving as well as Hugh Sam at the moment, but they are still providing that moving roadblock and preventing them from getting the absolute most out of those fresh tyres. But if they're able to... Oh, and around they go. Unforced error, and Erbil is off into the wall, and that's a retirement. It's terminal damage for the Renault driver, losing what looks to be the front left, or perhaps that's the rear left corner of their car then. That's what I see moving about in the rear, in the mirror rather, showing the left-hand side of the car. So Erbil is out of this race, but it seems as though we're not going to get a safety car or virtual safety car for that incident, and it seems to be far enough off of the circuit where that doesn't seem to be a problem as far as the game is concerned. So as it stands then, briefly delayed, Hugh Sam will now be able to get a march on and get moving up after the rest of the order, hopefully being able to get themselves back up to the lead as far as they're concerned. We've then got, of course, Rage out in the lead at the moment on those medium tyres they started the race on, so we'll have to wait and see how they are able to effect a lead from the charging pack behind, as we see the Haas driver of Morewood there, hashtag Go Morewood as they're saying in the chat, chasing after False 12, False on those 17-lap-old mediums, and Morewood on those 14-lap-old hards. So not only are those tyres younger, but they're also able to just take a bit more punishment, give them a bit more performance at this later stage of the race, or this middle stage of the race, in fact, as we are approaching, if not already beyond the halfway point. So then, with most of the pit stops completed for now, and likely we're going to see Rage and False 12 fall back down the order once they've made their stops, we can say that your provisional race leader for now would be Morewood, followed by Booth, Hugh Sam, Dog, Timolele, Luke, Mark Hopkins, Donald, Shamblezi, Charlie Chibbles, Dolphy, and then Ole Olaf, rounding out the order of cars still running. Of course, as I say, Rage and False 12 currently in P1 and P2, but after they make their stops, they will not continue to be there, and then it will depend entirely on Morewood and Booth, the two hard tyre runners at the front of the field at the moment, how they're able to preserve those tyres, and whether or not they will need to make another stop, whether they'll be overtaken on track or through that pit stop phase there. So we're just having a look then in terms of the battles on circuit at the moment. It is still Morewood, the closest to anybody on circuit right now. The Haas driver chasing after the Alfa Romeo of False 12. And Crimbulus, you in this position where you've got these younger, harder tyres chasing after a car with older, softer tyres. We see the lockup there for both cars heading into the second sector. What would you be thinking if you were both the attacker and defender in this scenario?
Well, if you're the defender out in front, you've only got to go a few more laps longer before you hit your pit window. There's a big amount of oversteer coming on the power there with those tires wearing out. But really, if the car behind you is going to get behind, I'm not going to defend too hard and cost myself time. We're on slightly different strategies, so I'm not going to compromise my own race positioning because of it. Now, for Morewood behind, is he going to try and get those hard tires to the end, or is he going to bolt on some softs late in the stages? He's pulling out to the inside with the DRS assistance into turn 1 there. He's down fully alongside, a little bit of a puff of smoke. It looks like he's gotten that job completely done, and False 12 really didn't fight it that hard, just stayed on the racing line and kind of let it happen. However, he's going to be close enough to make a second attack. He's in the slipstream with the DRS, but just hitting the braking zone for turn 4, not quite there. So it may be a situation where False 12 was looking to hold that position until he got past, and then we might see him come into the pit lane in the next couple of laps. But as I was saying with Morwood, it's really just a matter of how he wants to drive to try and preserve those tires. If he's going to try and get those hards to the end, he's had them on since lap 3. So trying to do 33 laps on a set of tires is quite a stretch.
Yes, indeed, and we're just having a look then and seeing how that's going to be affected then, that gap between these guys. Of course, that overtake happening down the second DRS straight, and it seems as though Morwood has been able to establish about a second or so in terms of a gap to False 12 behind, so it's unlikely that they'll have the DRS. They may well have the DRS, in fact, though, down this start-finish straight. They do. They also have 41% of their ERS available, whereas Morwood only has 6%. That's now gone up as they've gone through the braking zone there and recharged some of their battery, but this is the balance that you've got to strike in modern Formula One. If you have no ERS remaining, then not only are you going to find it difficult to attack, but also to defend and to get yourself into a consistent rhythm of being able to set good lap times, because of course you need that ERS. It accounts for about 160 horsepower coming from the MG UK alone, and that's an awful lot of performance in cars that weigh an awful lot more than they used to when they had 1,000 horsepower with the V10 engines back in 2005 and earlier than that. So then Morwood is starting to gallop away from False 12 then. That gap now up to about 1.5 seconds. Booth is then just behind in the other Haas car, about half a second back, and then similarly another half second back to Hugh Sam, the former race leader, who is looking to get back on top, I would imagine, and has that massive tyre advantage as well. Booth has 18-lap-old hard tyres versus Hugh Sam's 3-lap-old mediums. So the Haas is going to have their work cut out for them as they head up the hill here, and will need to really make this pass work and try not to then lose time as False 12 heads into the pits. So they no longer have the DRS on the second straight, but they'll have the DRS for the rest of this first straight. And Hugh Sam wisely not making the move down there. You know, they are the race leader, or former race leader. They've got the much fresher tyres, and they've got all the time in the world. They've got another 14 laps to be able to make a move. They don't need to get it done now and make a mistake or get into some contact. So it's all about getting to the end at this stage for Hugh Sam, and making sure that they get past the Haas cars on the way as carefully as possible, because of course an incident would likely ruin not just their race, but also the races of the Haas drivers in front as well, who, to be honest, they have gambled with that lap 5 safety car, gone onto the hard tyres, thought, right, we'll get either to the end or very close to the end and gain an awful lot of positions on the way, and it certainly seems to be working so far, doesn't it, Quimulus?
Yeah, so far it's put them in a pretty good track position around a track that only has a couple of real good overtaking zones. So we'll see how that comes good for them at the end of the race. They're just going to kind of have to either limp them around, or if they were to come in and pit now, they would still be inside the top 10. So they may be looking to grab some soft tires and go for a fastest lap at the end of the race.
And then up the inside then goes Hugh Sam, and a fairly easy DRS assisted move there into turn 1, and they've made their way past Booth. So Booth now back into P3, and still a very valiant effort from them. They've got Dog chasing behind, but 3 seconds still needs to be made up by the Racing Point driver, and then of course an overtake needs to happen too. But Hugh Sam now has about 2 seconds that they need to make up to Morwood, so I'd imagine that that's unlikely to happen over the course of just this lap. They might be able to get within DRS range, as we see now the Alfa Romeo of False 12 just fighting with Chambleezy down the start-finish straight. False obviously with those brand new soft tyres on the car, and Chambleezy with the slightly older but not too old medium tyres as well. And you just have to wait and see, will there be a move from the Mercedes driver to get back by? No, there will not. So False up into 10th place, and now just climbing their way back up the order after that pit stop. And we will wait and see as well how things shape out for the other car that pitted from the lead, and that was Rage, who's gone onto the soft tyre. They are about half a second back from their teammate Mark Hopkins, and wisely the Alpha Tauris just swap positions, allow the car with more pace just to get by and get chasing after those points, because of course we've got the team's championship to think about here, and I'm sure that the Alpha Tauri channel will be alive with chatter as they watch one another's streams. Of course, we're encouraging a lot of driver mentoring and engineering with this team's championship, because, you know, the faster drivers from Div 1, for example, they might be able to then help out the slower drivers, or just provide them with that extra context as to what's going on circuit that they may not be aware of as they're driving the car. And, you know, in that situation there, they could well have been on the radio and said, look, listen, Rage has got brand new tyres, and we just need to let him by so he has a greater opportunity to maybe tow you along and then also be able to get some positions back as the race goes on. As it is, he's got about 2.5 seconds to make up to Luke ahead, who he was on good pace with earlier on and when he had the slower tyre, and now of course that position is reversed. Luke has the slower tyre, the older tyre, and Rage now has that younger, softer tyre. So we will wait and see as to how that battle develops, as we now see Hugh Sam is now only half a second behind Morwood. So then, all those in the chat who like seeing Morwood up in front and in the lead, I feel as though you're going to be disappointed as we see the DRS opening now on the Williams, and to the inside they go, and up the inside into the Senna S. Morwood doesn't really fight it too much. A bit of a lock-up into that first turn, and then the move done there. So we'll then see, will there be any fight back on this second straight? It looks like there may not be. The DRS is open for the Haas car, but I think they're just a little bit too far back to be able to make a move. And yes, into the braking zone they go, and no swapping of positions there. So Hugh Sam retakes the lead on lap 25 of the Brazilian Grand Prix from Morwood, who was as far down as 14th position near the start of this race. And if you'd predicted that they'd been able to make their way back up, then I salute you very much so. A bit further down the order, Booth has pitted for new soft tyres. They've decided that they're not going to be able to take the Haas to the end of this race, and that means that Dog has now regained a podium position. It's not quite P2 that they were in earlier on, but P2 is now only 4 seconds up the road, and they have a short number of laps, about 10-11 laps to be able to catch them up and effect an overtake again on those much younger, softer tyres as well. So there'll be an interesting battle to watch there as the race unfolds. Mark Hopkins is about half a second or so behind Rage, so he's sticking with his teammate reasonably well as the two cars are just sort of working together to pull themselves up the order. They're using that draft incredibly well, I must say, because they've been able to take what was a about 3-second gap to Luke ahead, now down to 1 second or so for Rage, and then about 1 second as well for his teammate behind. So would you say, Crimulus, have you been racing just yet? Have you been seeing what's going on in terms of this team championship strategy and helping one another out, even if you're not racing?
There's definitely a lot of chatter in the channels on looking over each other's laps and preparation and setups, and as we're seeing here, there's also, a bit of on-track teamwork going together. It looks like Mark has just fallen outside of that DRS range now, but has definitely gotten a great pull up to catch up to Luke, and now has the opportunity to get both of the Alpha Tauris past that Red Bull there. So there's plenty of opportunity for this team's championship. Great camaraderie across the division. So I know the channel I'm a part of as part of the Mercedes team, I'm definitely looking to see what Timolele and Chamblizi can do and what Silver Arrow can do in Div 1 and across all the divisions. So it's definitely a new wrinkle to our league that I'm very glad to have.
Absolutely, and now we're starting to see some spicy action as the DRS is open there for Rage, as they're just closing up to the back of the Red Bull now. Erbil has left the session after retiring earlier on. We might be able to get a word with them later on. Who knows? We will wait and see. But we now see on the second DRS straight, closing, but just not enough ERS to be able to help affect that move there. So staying behind Luke for now. They have about 10% of that ERS remaining, does Rage, and it's a similar amount in Luke's car as well, only 6% now as they head into Sector 2, so that second sector is really going to be useful for them in terms of those heavier braking zones, relatively speaking, versus other areas of the circuit, and help them recharge the battery ever so slightly, so they can then defend and attack and all the rest of it. We've got then Timolele just up ahead of them, but Rage, of course, is still stuck in there behind and driving incredibly well to be able to make up all this time, pull their teammate along with them, and hopefully, as you say, these Alpha Tauris can work together and potentially get both of them by the Red Bull. It's shades of Albon versus Gasly here, as we see now much closer than the previous lap. Car number 6 goes by car number 5 round the outside on the start-finish straight. They're now heading down into the first cone, and there we go then, into the Senna S's. And their easy move from Rage, heading up into P5 and then down onto the second DRS straight. Interesting thing to note there as well is they set the fastest third sector time of the race so far by making that overtake and using the DRS and using those soft tyres as well. So really some good strategy going on, showing there's still plenty of pace left in these cars, even at these late stages of the race. And now with a bit of clean air in front of them, it'll be interesting to see whether or not they'll be able to then catch up to the likes of Timalele and possibly even Dog, and maybe threaten the chance of getting a podium here. You'd have to say it's definitely possible with the number of laps remaining. We've got 8 laps to go in this race, and if they're able to catch it even just half a second a lap, then they will catch the car in front with a few laps to spare.
Yeah, we've already seen the two champions battling out on different tires earlier in the race between Timalele and Rage. Now the tire situation is flipped around and Rage is on the faster tire, so we'll see if he can close that gap over the final laps of this race and get in a position to make a move. But Mark Hopkins right there, about 1 second back of Luke, so we'll see if he's going to be able to get past that Red Bull himself. Now, one thing I did notice was Booth come in for that extra set of soft tires. Getting off those hards might be an indication we may see Moorwood try that, or they're just trying to split the strategy and maximize the points. So we'll see what they're thinking in that regard.
And we're just having a little look at a replay here. So we see the Williams car then approaching the back of the Renault here. And this was earlier on when we saw Erbil just making the mistake, just spinning out there and allowing Hugh Sam back by. And then we just see again, here's the Haas going by false 12 on the start-finish straight. That was Moorwood making the move for the lead. And then we have a look here as Hugh Sam also then made the move on Moorwood this time, going into the Senna S and just taking the lead of this race. So we've had some good action so far in this race. Some more to come, I'm sure, as we've got still another 7 laps to go in this Brazilian Grand Prix. Just to give you a bit of an update in terms of some of the positioning, we've now got Dog right behind Moorwood. So Moorwood has been cruising along just outside of a second ahead for a number of laps now, but now Dog has gotten his foot down and been able to close up and just get himself into a position where he might be able to effect a move here. The gap is about 0.4 of a second as they head onto the second DRS straight. They've got about 30% of their ERS available, and Moorwood has an awful lot more, though. So they have a brilliant amount of backup to be able to use to defend with. They've got about 80% versus Dog's 30% currently. So while the DRS will certainly be helping, that use of the ERS is going to be one which is going to be crucial in the factors later on in this race. Just having a look at the poll then in the Twitch chat, and feel free to vote on it if you are liking the race so far. But we're looking at your driver of the day, and currently there is a substantial lead for Rage, 8 votes so far, with 47% of the vote share rather, with then Timalele with 2 votes, Dog with 4, Moorwood with 3, and Hugh Sam, the current leader of the race, not getting any votes at all. Any votes at all? Who would have thought it? Right then, so as we have a look at this battle then, as it continues to pan out, we're just seeing as I go on board with Dog now, he's got the DRS open, he's closing, he's looking to the inside, he makes the move up the inside, into the Senna S, into turn 1, but around the outside, Moorwood is able to hang it, he then slows up in the second corner, just kills all the momentum that Dog had built up there through the better exit line, and then down that second DRS straight. He gets the DRS open once again, does Dog, but he's not close enough to be able to make the move stick. And that was some brilliant defensive driving from Moorwood there. I think a couple more votes need to go to him as driver of the day, really, with driving like that. If he's able to maintain this position all the way to the end of the race, he'll certainly be getting my driver of the day, I tell you. So, as we continue then on this battle, I'll give you a bit of an update as to what is happening elsewhere as well. We've just seen Charlie Chibbles get himself by the Red Bull of Dolphy, because Dolphy has gone into the pits, going onto a new set of, or a scrub set rather, of soft tyres. Or at least they certainly look scrubbed from what I'm seeing there. No, the graphic has just changed and they're now a brand new fresh set of tyres. So Dolphy then just leaving the pits now, and Ole Olaf has just overtaken them as well by being out on circuit. In terms of other close battles, we don't have any other battles that are under a second. So Dog now making that move to the inside. Will they be able to get up the inside into turn 1? They make the move again. And once again, around the outside, Moorwood is just able to hold it. He's then able to just slow up nicely on that second corner there, but this time, Dog seems a bit more aware of the trick. He's been able to just lift off of the throttle ever so slightly. That means he's much closer on this second DRS straight. He goes to the inside, does Moorwood to defend the corner, and he's able to just stay there. Oh, and round the outside, Dog goes. A brilliant bit of driving, a brilliant bit of dueling between the two of them there. I can't help but feel as though Moorwood may have been able to use a bit more ERS. He's still got a good 20% more than what Dog has currently in their charge, but it seems as though that is likely going to be the end of this particular battle, as with 28 lap old hard tyres, it's unlikely that Morwood's going to really be able to mount a challenge back on Dog on those 15-lap-old medium tyres. So now, Morwood really needs to be wary of Timalele behind, the Division 3 champion, as we've been saying. He's a driver who certainly knows what he's doing in a fight and in terms of getting the outright pace from the car. And the Mercedes driver will now be closing up just about a second or so. May well have been able to get inside his second for that DRS detection zone. We will find out in just a moment's time. Yes, the DRS is open on the Mercedes. So he's not going to be close enough to make a move on Morwood just yet. But maybe on the second DRS straight, if there's good things happening for him in the Senna S and bad things happening for Morwood, then we may see a move into that particular part of the circuit. But I would wager we're going to have a look at this battle in about 1 lap's time. We then have a look at the Driver of the Day vote again, and we've got some more votes coming in. Just give us more, give us more. We've got 105 of you watching right now. I'm sure some of you can vote. We've got, what's that? I mean, my mental maths is not particularly brilliant, but I'd say that's somewhere between 20 and 30 votes right now. So come on, pull your finger out and get voting on that Driver of the Day. So then, we've got just a few laps to go then in this Brazilian Grand Prix. Lap 33 out of 36. Husam is cruising away in the lead, about 6.5 seconds ahead of the rest of the field. He's followed by Dog, Morwood, Timalele, Rage, Luke, Mark Hopkins, Donald, Booth, False 12, and Shambleezy, Charlie Chibbles, Dolphy, Ole Olaf, and then Erbil and Hammer Time out of the race because of incidents earlier on. A new fastest lap has been set by the Red Bull racing driver of Dolphy there. Getting a new fastest lap on the board, so that will deprive those in the top 10 of that extra point, unless they're able to mount a fantastic amount of pace there. And Timalele just up the inside into turn 1 there, and a fantastic move up the inside of Morwood there, and the Division 3 champion just eating him up there. I think that too much of Morwood's tyres have been used in trying to defend P2 from Dog, and now he's just very easily fallen back behind Timalele there, not really able to mount a re-overtaking challenge. And there we go, he's lost his podium. But you never know, anything can happen in Formula One, and it usually does. So we may see something happen towards the end of this race, perhaps an unforced error or a coming together between P2 and P3 possibly. There is still all the chance that Timalele could get himself up into P2 if Dog is a bit slower than him. And of course, they're on roughly similar average tyre lives and things like that. I wonder if we can have a look perhaps at the tyre lives of the drivers respectively there. But as we're looking into that as to whether or not that's something we can do, we can keep an eye on this battle with Rage now right up behind Morwood, having been able to make a really, really good attempt so far after getting that second pit stop out the way. And now with 10-lap-old softs versus 30-lap-old hard tyres, opens the DRS to the outside. He goes down the start-finish straight. He's not got very much ERS remaining, but breaking into turn 1, he goes round the outside. He does the reverse of what Morwood did earlier on in his defense of P2, and there the position is made. Rage up into P4 then, and will now chase down with only 8/10 the gap between him and Timalele. There is the potential then for the AlphaTauri to get onto the podium.
Rage is actually in a podium position at the moment, because if you notice the penalty markers there, Timalele carrying a 3-second track limits penalty while Rage has been able to keep it clean. So getting past Morwood quickly and effectively was really important for Rage there to not get held up over these last few laps. And now he may be able to take a podium without getting it on track, but I think he's going to want to get it on track as well.
So we've got a lot of people excited in chat at the prospect of a Rage podium, and we'll wait and see as to whether or not he's going to make another overtake on track. Of course, there is the possibility that if Dog has any time penalties as well, then he could potentially be jumping up to P2 at the end of this race. We'll have to wait and see. But now, onto the DRS straight. He gets the DRS open, that letterbox at the back of the car, reducing the drag that is on that car, and away they go then. No time penalties as is for Rage, as Crimulus has just pointed out for us, and no move this time round going down the first DRS straight. Will there be an attempt at a second at all down the second DRS straight? They've got the DRS open once again, but it seems like Timalele just has a bit more speed down that straight to be able to defend without having to really try all that much. So that is that for the battle so far with Rage. And I don't imagine that we'll be seeing anything else there. But now, Mark Hopkins is right behind Luke. The gap only 1/10 of a second. You see how close they are on circuit there. And as they head into Sector 2, will there be any last lap heroics? And up the inside, he's certainly looking. He's thinking about it, is Mark. And he's just pulling out of the move there. The tyre just locking up slightly as he realises that the gap was always going to close. And now, right up behind the Red Bull team, He's got another lockup. He takes a wider line there, and he's lost an awful lot of time. It looks like the chances there have gone for the driver. And now, as Hugh Sams comes down the grid and across the start-finish line, it is P1 for Hugh Sam, 22, the Williams driver, winning the Brazilian Grand Prix provisionally, unless we see any shakeouts there in terms of the results. And Rage goes P2. Rage goes P2 after time penalties for Morwood, Dog, and Timalele there. So Timalele falling drastically down the order. P7 is where he has finished. Morwood making it back up into P4, and Dog managing just to hold on to P2, to a podium position there rather, as they come to the end of the race. We've got a couple more cars still just circulating and getting to the end. So Chamblizi comes across the line in P11 after doing a 20-lap stint on those medium tyres. Charlie Chivels is now coming up to the line in the Scarlet Red Ferrari, and an afternoon to forget for them possibly. Same with Dolphy behind them coming up towards the line as well. And that is your order then. So we have Hugh Sam, the winner of this race, Rage in P2, and then Dog in P3. Morwood is coming home in a respectable P4 as Dolphy just crashes into the wall as they approach the start-finish line, and they stop on the grid with one corner missing from their wagon. So, end of the race there. Driver of the day is Rage, according to the game, and according to you folks at home voting in the Twitch chat, it is also Rage. What a fantastic effort from him there to be able to go ahead and get that all sorted. And as we can see here, podium celebrations. Hugh Sam takes the initial win for Division 2 on the PC, and alongside him, some very worthy drivers who will be able to challenge him all the way to the end, I'm sure. So then, Quimbulis, what did you think of that race and the immediate aftermath? Of course, we're going to discuss this a bit more in depth in just a few minutes' time, but as a gut reaction, how did you think of that one?
Well, it was a great race. I mean, early on, the early safety cars and the early start definitely looked a little bit shaky. Drivers getting their feet kind of settled, but the side-by-side action towards the tail end of the race, especially all the battles that Morwood was in with those extremely worn, hard tires, really made it work and really brought it home well to stretch those hard tires that long.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right then. So we will be back in just a few moments' time. We're going to go to a very brief break, and then we will have an interview with at least one of the drivers there from that race. So don't go anywhere. We'll have some more analysis and some interviews to go before we round out the stream for this evening's. But thank you very much for joining us so far. We really appreciate it, and we're loving some of the engagement that we've got in the chat right now. Great race, says Lost My Underwear. That was so exciting, in fact, I forgot how to spell it. So we will throw to a break then. Welcome back then, ladies and gentlemen. So that was the race. That was a very exciting Brazilian Grand Prix, really. Action all up and down the field, lots of great overtakes. And one of the drivers who was doing incredibly well in that race and was just done a bit dirty, in my opinion, in terms of the time penalties at the end, joins us now, and that is Tim Alele. How are you doing?
Decent, I guess. For the bad race I had. Well, medium race I had, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it was certainly a decent performance in terms of your pace. I mean, we saw there, we're just seeing some highlights now playing in the background. We saw the start there briefly as well. Of course, you started reasonably well, but then lost out a couple of positions in the first few corners. What was sort of going through your mind at that point, and how easy was it to sort of then come back from that and make your way up the field again?
I thought the start was fine. I only dropped like one position because we were like too wide into the center S's. But I guess only losing one position with losing that much like momentum, I think that was fine. I thought it was fine at that point in time.
Good stuff. And we saw some great overtakes from you as well. Were there any that you were particularly happy about? Were there any that you sort of sat there thinking to yourself, yes, that was good?
I don't really remember any of them.
Well, we saw this battle here, for example, with you going side by side with Rage through some corners. That was entertaining to watch.
Oh, that was fun. That
was good fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed him. Like, I didn't expect him to just come back around. I really thought it was done when I overtook him, like here on the outside. Or was that one lap later? Yeah, this was one lap later, right? Yeah. But,
that was one lap later. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't expect him to come back. That was fun for sure.
Good stuff. And with that round one out of the way then, and your first taste of PC Division 2 officially, not as a reserve or anything like that, how do you think it compares to Division 3 last season, which of course you won?
Yeah, I think it's Division 3 was fun, but this is definitely more competitive, especially I don't know his name, Sam something?
Hugh
yeah,
Sam.
exactly. Hugh Sam, he's very quick. Yeah, I'm not sure if I can keep up with him. But yeah, it's definitely more fun.
Excellent.
Dog as well, very fast.
Absolutely, certainly is. I mean, he's one of these drivers who was in Division 1, and then because we've got so many new people in, he now seems to be sort of top of the class for Division 2. Really, it's like we were saying in commentary about how he's a bit like a sort of a boxer or something, where they hovering on the weight class line, where they're either the sort of towards the bottom end perhaps of the upper class, but then really at the top of the other. Well, it's been great to have you on and have a few questions with you. Quimulus, did you have any for Tim Alele?
Yeah, the only one I'd ask about is obviously that first safety car restart. We saw you disconnect, and we were wondering when you were going to get back in, and all of a sudden we see you kind of bolting down the road. What point did you finally get control of your car? Was that the AI reconnecting and sending you off, or did it? And then you had to recover there.
Yeah, exactly. My AI was driving normally, but then when you try to take control, it has like a countdown with like the lights going off until you can take control, and then the AI just booked it. And it told me to give back position, but I didn't have control yet, so before reaching the line, I of course had to go on the brakes fully, but then that lost me like every single position.
Yeah, I think you went from P3 before the restart to you slotted back in about P9. So it's definitely rough to see, but you did a great job battling back there. I think only track limit penalties really did you in at the tail end, but the on-track action and the pace you had overall was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I'll have to look in the steward's room, but I believe I was still P4 because the guy behind me also had 3 seconds and I had 3 seconds, and the guy behind me, he got P4, and we had the same amount of penalties, so I think believe I'm still P4, but I'll guess I'll have to check.
Well, we certainly look forward to seeing what you do with the rest of this season. It's looking like we're going to have a cracker, really, if all the races are like that. So then, thank you very much, Tim Alele. We will let you go. We will let you do whatever it is you want to do with the rest of your day, and we will do a bit more discussion on how that race panned out then. So, in terms of that one then. Quimulus, what were the sort of the main flashpoints, do you reckon, in terms of that race? What were the key moments that decided the ultimate result?
I mean, you've got to give it to the first safety car restart being a really important moment, just as drivers were getting set in, and a lot of the running order stayed fairly steady throughout the rest of it. But I mean, obviously, Husam checking out up front and really just controlling the race from the get-go. But we saw some really great midfield battles, and I would also say that the point where Rage swapped with his teammate in order to get the faster car ahead with Mark Hopkins there really moved that whole group forward.
Absolutely. And then, of course, we then saw towards the end of the race as well that Mark was then able to get right up behind Luke, whereas he'd been trailing by about 3 seconds or so when he made that initial swap with Rage. And so the fight was clearly on, but just without the added benefit that his teammate had of those softer, younger tires, he was finding life a bit more difficult in terms of getting by, really, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, and it just goes to show just what the tire advantage can be and how important it is to have a good tire strategy throughout all the rounds this season. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that as we go up and down the calendar and up and down the divisions to see which strategies, and may not be necessarily the fastest raw pace drivers to get there, but sometimes the smarter driver is going to pick up positions by being on the right tire at the right time.
Absolutely. And then in terms of some of those overtakes, obviously at the safety car restart, we saw the incident with Donald getting all tangled with the McLaren behind, and whether or not that McLaren was tagged by somebody else behind them. I mean, I'm not too sure because they were off camera when that incident happened. But that certainly, I mean, Donald was looking really competitive up until that point, I would have said.
Yeah, and I believe he took the fastest lap at the end of the race there and kept any of the ones inside the top 10 from getting the bonus points. So definitely one to keep an eye out for the rest of the season. If they can steer clear of some of those incidents, keep that front wing clean, they've definitely got the pace to be a good challenger there.
Absolutely. I think we're just going to have a look at that incident then. So yeah, just in the background you can see a couple of incidents. That may well have been the start of the race, in fact. Yes, that's what I'm being told. So that's the start of the race there that we see. Then we had this 3-wide moment, very reminiscent of Alonso and Massa and Mark Webber in 2012 when they were going all side by side. And then, of course, the compromised exit from Donald there just meant that he was then a sitting duck for the Red Bulls to just go by on that second DRS straight. And we see here Husam just making their way past Timalele as they headed into the pits. And that was on the safety car restart, in fact. So safety car restart, there you go. You see the contact briefly there between the McLaren and the Renault. They both go off circuit and then rejoin, and a couple of cars just darting around them, including, of course, eventual P4 man Morwood, who did incredibly well in terms of getting those tyres all the way to the end, because his teammate, of course, as we mentioned in commentary, designed to bail out on those particular hard tyres and go onto the softs towards the end.
Yeah, the splitting of the strategy I think worked out well. If they had both stayed out, we may not have seen Booth have the pace that Morwood did. He clearly managed the tires a lot better than his teammate, but by staying out and splitting the strategy, I think it's a good points haul for Haas in the team's championship and the constructors championship inside the division, after coming together at the start and really kind of forcing an early pit stop for both of them.
Yes, indeed. And then we're just having a look at this incident here, and this was one which I thought may have ended up having a much bigger impact on the race than it actually ended up doing. Off went Erbil there in the Renault as they were being chased by the previous leader of the race and eventual winner, of course, Husam. That unforced error, just lighting up the rear tyres and spinning off and hitting the wall, disconnecting the rear left tyre. I thought for sure that was going to be another safety car or another virtual safety car, perhaps, as we saw in PC Division 1 yesterday. And of course, if either of those scenarios had happened, then all of a sudden, Husam would have been in a much worse off position, because he was in, I believe, about P5, P6 at the time, having just done his stop. And so therefore, to lose a bunch of time to the cars ahead, who would have gotten a free pit stop out of it, would have been pretty gut-wrenching, I'd imagine.
Yeah, the safety car and VSC can always, throw a wrench in the works for all the drivers, but it looked like that Erbil spun far enough off track, and I think there might even be a little marshal's post right there on the inside, but lighting up the rear tires out of that corner there, it happens a lot. It's definitely a high action spot for people losing the car in unforced ways.
Yes, indeed. And then we're just seeing here Morwood chasing after Rage. This is I believe, late on in the race, and or rather Rage getting past Morwood, and that was a move which proved fairly decisive, because of course if he hadn't been able to get that move done, then we may well have seen Morwood on the podium and Rage not.
Yeah, Morwood stayed right up with that lead pack very late in the race there, and definitely could have gone a little bit different. I do think though that stretching those tires, I think today's result, he maximized what he could and did a great job there.
Yes, of course, because as whilst it was a great drive and really good, especially in defence against Dog and the tyre preservation, as you mentioned, we do have to, of course, mention the fact that they did come together with their teammate. That is the first rule of racing, that you do not break, do not hit your teammate, and so for that reason, that sort of leads us nicely now into our sort of drivers of the day. Now, for me personally, I would say that if Morwood had been the victim of unlucky circumstance and then made his way back to where he finished, then I would have said he was my driver of the day. But I think that because there was that incident between the two teammates, that kind of disqualifies them, if anything, from my particular selection. I would probably be more inclined to say Rage and agree with the Twitch chat. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I would have to agree to go with Rage as well. Definitely. We were speculating both in the team's reveal stream and in the pre-show for this race how Rage would do coming back to PC Division 2 and getting it back into a more comfortable set, and right out the gate there he is on the podium. So we should definitely look forward to him potentially being a championship challenger.
Absolutely. So we've run our course then this evening. We've had a very good time of it. In fact, it's very good to be back. And of course, we will have an awful lot more racing coming for you in the following weeks and months. We'll have a couple of special off-week events here and there as well, after I believe our 4th and 8th rounds. So we'll give you a bit more information on those as and when we get closer to them. So as you can see there, we have Spain, Italy, Azerbaijan, Mexico, Bahrain, Austria, Belgium, Japan, Hungary, Canada, then finishing at Silverstone in Great Britain. So those are the races still coming up with their respective times and the weekends in which they will take place. Of course, we've got Division 1 will be taking place on a Friday, as happened yesterday, and then we've got Division 2 today, and that will be on the official FRS broadcast with myself and Quimbulus, and we will then be able to bring you all the other divisions that we can as scheduling and work conflicts and so on permit. So we will. We also just want to make you aware, of course, if you are paying attention to the posts on the subreddit and in our Discord server and just around in terms of things like our channel description, which I'm sure we can update to reflect this. But we have some community streams. So whether that be some of the guys who are racing, or whether it's those who are broadcasting rather than us at the sort of official team, then please do go check them out, especially on those days when we're not broadcasting and the main channel is offline. We've got some streams coming up tomorrow, for example, for some of the lower divisions and divisions on other platforms and things like that as well, which will be well worth the watch, I'm sure. I'm certainly going to tune in at various points during the day. And apart from that, we will see you next week. Of course, we would love you to come and check out the subreddits that are involved with us here at FRS. There's, of course, r/Formula 1, the official Formula 1 subreddit with well over 1 million subscribers now. Please do come and check that out if you are interested in being involved with the Formula 1 community on Reddit. And then, of course, there is r/F1 Games as well, which is the big hub for the F1 games by Codemasters on Reddit as well, with a rapidly growing community, it must be said. So then, I have been Daniel Gilligan. I have very much enjoyed hosting this evening's stream for you all at home, whether it is the morning, the afternoon, or the evening for you. I have been joined, of course, by the wonderful Quimbulus.
Thank you for having me along. I've got to hurry off and jump in the car for the Xbox Division races going on. And definitely you can check out the YouTube channel for past broadcasts, and same with the Twitch channel here. So a lot of stuff gets posted on both of those areas. If you check the our Formula 1 YouTube channel, you can see some of the previous season's history go through.
Absolutely. And you know what, whilst you're here, we might as well engage in a little bit of shameless self-promotion. What's your Twitch channel? Are you going to be broadcasting your point of view of that Xbox race?
I will have mine going up. It is twitch.tv/Quimbulus. My name, QUIMBULUSYT. And I throw it up every week so you can see what middle of the pack driver is going to look like, because I think it's going to be quite a challenge for me to get on the podiums this season, because Xbox division has gotten much better.
Well, I'll certainly be one of the guys supporting you. I'll be part of the Quimbulus army, or whatever nickname we come up for it. The Quimbulus cult, perhaps. Who knows? We've also been joined, of course, by the slightly quieter and less inclined to come on the microphone, but as always, the Mac Daddy of the FRS stream team, and that is Mr. Tom Mac.
Thank you very much. Have a good stream today, and we'll be back next week, Friday, with Division 1. But make sure you go and check out all the community streams that have been getting set up for it feels like hundreds, but the 13 other divisions we've got in the league that the majority of them have streams for. So we'll get them all sort of hosted and raided on Twitch as and when they come about. So make sure you go and check them out. The night is still young, so plenty more racing going on.
Absolutely. So we have been FRS. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you next time.